My name is Tom Holman. I work for the Bloomington Housing Authority. Among other things, we do redevelopment. One of our projects that's currently underway is the apartments and retail complex just south of Southtown on Penn Avenue and American Boulevard. We also offer home improvement loans for homeowners to improve energy, the exteriors, mechanical systems in their homes. And there are brochures on the table regarding that. Tonight we are having Neely Crane-Smith from the Center of Energy and the Environment talk about no-cost and low-cost ways to reduce energy waste in your homes. And I'm going to turn this over to her.
Oh, hey. So good evening, folks. You get a gold star. Let's try that again. Good evening. Thank you. Hi. So my name's Neely. And like Tom said, I work for a nonprofit called the Center for Energy and Environment. And we are located out of Minneapolis. And what we do and what we've been doing for the past 30 years is help homeowners and businesses across the state of Minnesota save on energy. Now, I'm a certified residential energy auditor, but my job isn't going to people's homes. What I've been doing for the past 5 years is talking to schools and churches and businesses and lovely folks like yourself about reducing energy waste in your homes. And I've actually given over 300 of these talks over the past 5 years. So I'm excited to be back here in Bloomington. So today, I want to talk about reducing energy waste in our homes, but I'm going to start with a quick show of hands. Who here thinks that saving energy is a good idea? You're like, duh, yes, it's a great idea. Saves money, it's good for the environment, but just because it's a good idea doesn't make it easy. And I talk to a lot of people who say, you know I could be using less energy, I'm sure my utility bills could be smaller, I'm just not quite sure how to make that happen. And so my goal tonight is to help answer some of those questions and give you some really high quality, easy things you can do to cut back on your energy use. So what I'm gonna start out with tonight is kind of a little energy 101, so how our homes use and waste energy. Then I'm going to talk about some of those good low-cost, no-cost ways to reduce energy waste. And then I'm going to follow up with some resources, so some places that you can go to get some more help to reduce energy use in your home. Sounds good? All right. Please feel free at any time if you'd like to partake in some coffee, cookies, water, sugar, caffeine, anything you need to keep going is good with me. All right, so we're going to start, like I said, with some Energy 101. So here's a little bit of trivia about myself. I'm not from Minnesota. I'm actually a born and bred native of Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? But I've been here for 10 years now. But I learned one thing really quickly when I moved up here. What do you think is the #1 use of energy in a Minnesota home? You guess it? Heating, exactly, heating and cooling. So this chart is gonna be a nice little cheat sheet for you on how our home uses energy. You always wanna start where you're using the most energy. That's where you're gonna get the biggest bang for your buck. And in Minnesota, that is always, always, always heating and air conditioning. 55% of our home's energy use. Now, does anyone have a bright idea about the second use? Bright? Lights, thank you. Lights and electronics are 20%. I'll stop making you guess. Appliances are 15, and water heating is 10. So you break down the average Minnesota household, we spend 75% of our energy and 75% of our energy bills on heating and air conditioning, lights and electronics. Appliances are 15, water heating is 10. So I'm going to start at the bottom with water heating, and then work my way up to the grand finale of heating and air conditioning. But before I start talking about the things that you can do, I just want to tell you, so I've noticed this kind of weird side effect of my job, which is when I go to people's houses, they try to hide things from me. They're like, don't look at my thermostat, don't look at my basement, don't look at my windows. People get a little freaked out. And I want to tell you what I tell the same thing to those folks, which is you don't have to do everything to be energy efficient. All right, I'm going to talk about a list of things you can do to reduce energy waste. None of them are required. They're all suggestions. Energy efficiency is like a recipe. And it's a recipe with 3 main ingredients: good habits, good products, and sometimes a good investment. So good products, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's the good stuff we put in our homes to help us save energy. But products are not the end-all be-all. Habits are really important. Because in fact, if you cloned your house, so same house, same size, same number of people who live there, that house could use 3 times more energy than yours just based on habits alone. So it's got to be kind of a balance there. And then sometimes it's a good investment. It's a bit of a larger project that can have a really big impact on your comfort and your energy use. So you want to think about getting a little out of column A, a little out of column B, and maybe something out of column C to help reduce energy waste in your home. All right? All right, so let's dive into our ingredients. So I'm going to start with water heating, again, which is 10% of our home's energy use. And this first thing I'm going to talk about is about efficiency, but it's also about safety. And that's making sure your water heater is set to the proper temperature. So if you've ever been in front of your water heater, you've probably noticed a dial on it that conveniently has no numbers on it whatsoever. That's the temperature setting for your water heater. Now, what your water heater should be set at is 120 degrees, which is usually like a triangle or a hash mark. And that's important for 2 reasons. One is that your water heater is basically a giant tank of water that you're heating all day long. And when you're not using that hot water, it's slowly losing its heat, and you're going to have to pay more to heat that water up again. It's called standby loss. So when you keep your water heater at 120, that's your water heater's sweet spot. That's really where it's most efficient, and you're not getting a lot of those standby losses. More importantly, though, at 120 degrees, it takes over 5 minutes for someone to get a 2nd or 3rd degree burn. If your water heater is turned up just 10 degrees to 130, that same burn takes seconds. So making sure your water heater is at 120 is saving you money, but it's also preventing the risk of accidental scalding. Now, if you are thinking, okay, but if I turn down my water heater, there is no earthly way I'm getting hot water to my 2nd floor or the bathroom across the house, the problem there is not the temperature of your water heater. The problem is your pipes. If your supply pipe, the pipe that brings hot water to your fixtures, if that's uninsulated, you could be losing up to 4 degrees of heat between your water heater and that fixture. And in December, those are a precious 4 degrees. So for a couple bucks, you can buy what's called self-sealing pipe insulation. It's really easy to install. And what I recommend is insulating the first 6 feet or as much as you can reach of that supply pipe, which the way you can tell which one that is turn on a hot water faucet somewhere and then just touch carefully those pipes. Whichever one is warm is your supply pipe. If you have an older water heater, something that's 10 years or older, I would also recommend getting a water heater jacket or blanket, that water heater insulation. Just a nice way to add another layer there to keep that heat in that water where you want it. Any questions? No? All right. So,
the newer water heaters not need a jacket?
Great question. Newer water heaters typically are built with sufficient insulation. So in some cases, actually, installing a jacket on a water heater that was built in the last 5 years, depending on its efficiency, is kind of a wash. But if they're older, it's a better bet that they're not going to have as much insulation as the newer models. If you touch the side of your water heater and it's warm, you can feel the heat, it's a good sign that you probably need some insulation on there. All right, so another good product you could install is high-efficiency water fixtures. Now, I've heard these called before low flow. I'm not a huge fan of that term because these new fixtures actually do maintain a really good pressure. A high-efficiency shower head has just as good of pressure as a low-efficiency one. The difference is the gallons per minute, how much water it's actually using per minute. Technically, high efficiency water fixture, shower head, or faucet aerator is anything that's 2.0 gallons per minute or GPM or less. So if you look at your shower head and you can't find a GPM number on there, it's not high efficiency. But luckily, they come in a really wide range of colors and sizes and applications now, so it's not just one dinky little high efficiency. And for each shower head you replace with a high efficiency version, you can save about $35 a year. Yes?
Long story short, I had the original shower head in there for 100 years, and after about 6, 7, 8 minutes, boy, it got that water get lukewarm. I installed one of the high energy efficient things. We can take about 3 showers in there and it's still not losing. It's just fantastic.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good point. You're going to make that hot water go a little farther.
A hell of a lot farther.
I like that. Now, if you have a high efficiency shower head, or really any shower head, and you're having some issues with it getting clogged, a really easy way to unclog those is to actually put your shower head in a bag or a little container of vinegar.
They say actually you can tie it around it too.
Or yeah, just hang it, have that bag right around the shower head. It's a really great way to rinse that out. That can improve some of the performance as well.
I could teach this class.
I know, come on, no. So a good habit you can use, this is an oldie but a goodie, is washing clothes in cold water. So washing clothes in cold water gets them just as clean, okay, I promise. And actually it helps our clothes look newer longer. Hot water, even warm water, tends to be rough on our clothes. The thing is, 90% of the cost of washing clothes at home comes from heating the water, 90%. So the average Minnesota family can knock about $40 off the bill per year just by switching that dial to cold. Now, personally speaking, I'm allergic to dust, so I still wash my sheets, linens, towels in hot water, but I do everything else in cold. If you're kind of worried about getting, brights just as bright, whites just as clean, has anyone here used Borax? Okay, there's a Borax, B-O-R-O-X, is a non-toxic household cleaner. It's really great for a lot of applications, and it's also a fabulous laundry booster. So you put half a cup of Borax in with your laundry detergent, and it just helps amp up that cleaning power. So that's a great way to make the switch to cold water. Any questions on water? No? All right, we will soldier. Oh, yes.
Okay, now I want to put my wash on cold. I have cold water soap, cold water soap. But he always wants to turn the hot on too, besides the cold.
I think, it's very easy for a lot of us to make this association with hot meaning cleaner, right? Like it's sterilizing our clothes. Well, really, to get water hot enough to do that to our clothes, we would be destroying them. Actually, one way to kill bacteria in our clothing to make sure it's really, really, really clean is to dry it on the line. Sunlight naturally kills bacteria. It's also a great way to reduce energy. And personally, I think clothes that are dried on the line just smell better. But that's one way that you can actually guarantee to kill bacteria is by using the power of the sun. Also, I put a blue Post-it note on my clothes washer trying to teach other people that good habit. But it takes time. It takes time to sort of work these new things into our vocabulary, as it were.
I was just going to say that someone described a clothesline to me as a solar clothes dryer.
I like that. It is. That's a really cheap way to get solar power. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to appliances, 15% of our home's energy use. And I have a little confession here. I kind of have a thing for the avocado green fridges from the 70s. I think it's super cute. But the thing is, that fridge there uses 4 times more energy than a modern Energy Star rated fridge. Just because older appliances continue to technically function does not mean that they're working for you. And fridges are a great example. Fridges are the king of energy consumption in our home. They're running 24/7, 365, and this happens to me a couple times every year. I'll get an email or a panicked phone call from someone who says, okay, I don't understand. I just got a new fridge. You told me it was going to save me energy, but my electricity bill went up. What happened? My first question is always, what did you do with the old fridge? Put it in the basement for beer. Really expensive beer, okay? If your fridge was made in the 1980s, it cost about $100 a year to run it. If it was made in the 70s or earlier, you're paying about $200 a year to run it. And if all you have in there is like a 6-pack of PBR, that really adds up. Especially because right now, Xcel Energy will pay you to come to your home and recycle a second working fridge. They'll actually send a crew out to your house, they'll pick it up, and from now until September, they'll pay you $50 to have your fridge recycled in Minnesota by a Minnesotan company. So if you have that beer fridge hanging out in your basement or garage, now is a really good time to ask yourself if it's really worth that $100, $200 a year. When it comes to appliances in general, how old is too old? When should you think about replacing them? I have an easy way to remember this. Rule of thumb, if your appliance is old enough to vote, okay? If it's old enough to vote, it's probably time to say goodbye. The most important appliances to look at, like I said, are that fridge, but also clothes washers, dishwashers. Those are the two other appliances that can eat up quite a lot of energy. When you're looking for new ones, there are a couple things I recommend looking at. One is, have you folks seen the Energy Star rating before? Okay, great. And that's just, it's very common on appliances, on light bulbs, you'll see that blue Energy Star symbol. That's a great place to start. You know, it's just a basic federal designation for energy efficiency. However, Energy Star is not the end-all be-all. And there's actually a really wide range of use within Energy Star. So what I recommend is also looking at those yellow energy guide labels. Have you folks seen those before? Okay, good. They're on a lot of appliances, a lot of electronics. You'll start seeing them on TVs soon. And this gives you the most important piece of information, which is, how much is this thing gonna cost me a year? Because when you look at those older appliances, you know, we don't pay for our appliances just once. We pay for them every time that we use them. And it's the operating cost, the day-to-day cost of running them, that makes older appliances so expensive to run in the long run. So a good example is looking at getting a new clothes washer. So you have a Harvest Gold model that you would like to go quietly into that good night. If you get an Energy Star rated model, you're gonna pay more for it up front, but over its lifetime, it will use so much less in operating costs, you will have saved enough to buy the matching dryer. So energy efficient appliances really do pay for themselves. It is important to do your research though, and I really, really recommend doing your research before something dies and you have to replace it really quickly. Consumer Reports is a really good resource, and I would also ask your friends and family. If they've worked with a contractor or if they got an efficient appliance that they really like, it's a great way to get some recommendations. Any questions on appliances? Nope. All right.
Are chest freezers basically the same as refrigerators? Or are they...
That's a good question. The efficiency of chest freezers actually has not changed drastically in the past 30 years. What's most important about chest freezers is to make sure they're as full as humanly possible. So I have a coworker who's a hunter. He keeps that thing stocked. It actually runs fairly efficiently. But if it's empty, that's where it really starts driving up the cost.
So I have water jugs if you don't.
Exactly. Water jugs are a perfect way to just keep that there. All right. So I'll move on to lights and electronics. So 20% of our home's energy use. I'll have to ask for another show of hands. Who here has ever touched one of these light bulbs when they've been on before? Yeah. Who did it a second time? Oh, quick learners. I like to see that. You probably noticed that these lights, incandescents, get super, super hot. Well, a trick to tell if something in your home is wasting energy is to look for the heat. Heat is a sign of energy waste. If something is producing heat and it's not its purpose in life to do so, so things like DVD player, your cell phone charger, or a light bulb, it means it's wasting energy. And incandescents get really, really hot because they really, really waste about 90% of their electricity as heat. When I was a little girl, I played with the Easy Bake Oven. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It used light bulbs to bake food. You could bake food with them, okay? In fact, the word incandescent means to light with heat. And that's why a lot of Minnesotans are switching over to a newer lighting technology. Any guesses? LEDs and CFLs. Exactly, compact fluorescent light bulbs. So CFLs have been around for a while, and when they first came out, they were pretty terrible. You know, I've talked to a lot of people who've had issues with flickering, dimming, humming, the light just looks weird. So it's good to know that in the past couple of years, this technology has come a really, really long way. And CFLs that are made these days bear little to no resemblance to those earlier models. They now come in a wide range of shapes and sizes. So it's not just the curly pigtail bulbs. You can also find them in indoor and outdoor floodlights, bathroom globes. My favorite, which is called an A-line bulb. A-line compact fluorescents are the same size, about the same size and shape as an incandescent. They've got that nice domed cover. The difference is, one of these compact fluorescents, the right kind of compact fluorescent, uses 75% less electricity and can last 7 to 10 times longer, meaning over its lifetime, you can save about $40 per bulb. Does that mean that they should be in every single light socket in your house? No. You get the biggest bang for your buck with compact fluorescents when they're installed in high-use areas. So places like kitchens, living rooms, dining rooms, closets, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you replace the 5 most used lights in your house with compact fluorescents, you're going to save about $25 a year. Now, when it comes to buying the right kind of compact fluorescent, that is something, unfortunately, that's still a little bit tricky. So I'm going to make it a little bit easier, and I have all this on one of my nice educational handouts up here, so you don't have to memorize it. But we've all gotten used to buying light bulbs based on wattage, right? Going to get a 60 watt, 75 watt. In the future, wattage is not going to be as useful a measurement tool. It's a good time to start learning your lumens. Lumens is the actual measurement of visible light that's being produced by a light bulb. So, for example, a 60 watt incandescent produces 800 lumens of visible light, which means when you're buying a replacement bulb, you want to look for something that produces the same amount of lumens. I've been at the store and seen CFLs that claimed they were the same as a 60 watt, but when I looked at the lumens rating, they produced less than 800 lumens. Now, there are a couple ways to avoid getting a bulb like that. One is to look at the lumens. Second is always buy Energy Star rated compact fluorescents. And I cannot stress that enough. Always buy Energy Star. They are the only bulbs that are tested consistently for safety and for quality. The other thing to look at is the color. Compact fluorescents come in a range of 4 colors, from daylight, which is sort of a bluer, whiter light, all the way to warm white, which is more like the light that an incandescent produces. That's based on something called the Kelvin temperature, which has nothing to do with how hot the bulb is, but everything to do with what it's made of.
What do you recommend for reading?
For reading, I recommend daylight bulbs with a higher Kelvin number. That bluer, whiter light, even if the bulb is producing the same amount of lumens, the same amount of visible light, that whiter light, our eyes read as being brighter. So for example, I cross stitch, and I have a little daylight bulb that I use for that. It's really illuminating. For living rooms, kitchens, sort of communal spaces, I do recommend the warm white bulbs that are a little more orangey, sort of yellow. They tend to be a little nicer. Sometimes daylight can be a little sterile when it's in those big spaces.
Long story short, over the kitchen stove, I got 2 bulbs, and the little things are 40 watts. and it takes so damn much. I took one out, and it still does a good job of lighting, but I've not seen a substitute for those energy efficient ones.
The sort of different ones.
Yeah.
Here's a trick. If you can't find a special or a kind of compact fluorescent at Home Depot, Menards, those, Excel does sell specialty bulbs online and over the phone. So you can give them a call, visit their website. They've got a lighting store that has things like those little decorative bulbs or candelabra base, stuff that's a little bit smaller. Although we're starting to see more like three-way or dimmable CFLs in stores as well.
They need to be energy efficient.
Exactly, yep. Now, after you've used your CFL for, you know, the 5 to 7 years or whatever, and it's just saved you buckets of money and it finally burns out, what do we do with old compact fluorescents? Recycle them, yes. You can take them to hazardous waste, or you can recycle CFLs for free at Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, most Ace Hardware stores, and IKEA. However, I don't recommend buying replacement bulbs at IKEA because none of them are Energy Star rated. Well. Now, compact fluorescents, they're a great lighting technology, but they are temporary. CFLs are a placeholder. They're just hanging around until the next lighting technology really gets its feet under it, which someone already said, LEDs, or light emitting diodes. Light emitting diodes their real strength is their lifetime. Light emitting diodes, LEDs, last a really, really long time. We use LED nightlights that have a rated life of 100,000 hours. So like heirloom nightlights, right? And you can find them a lot now for applications like holiday lights, flashlights, night lights, under-counter lighting. And we're starting to see more LEDs become available to replace your incandescent or your compact fluorescent. Personally, I'm going to wait a little bit longer to buy an LED, and that's for a couple reasons. One is that LEDs tend to be directional. They're like spotlights. They don't diffuse, which is fine for under your counters, maybe kind of weird in a bathroom vanity. Second is color. They're still working on getting a nice warm color out of them. But for me, and most importantly, is cost. You can expect to pay about 50, 60 bucks a bulb for an Energy Star LED. Now, they do last longer than compact fluorescents, but it's still an infant technology. If you're interested though, what I recommend is Philips came out this year with a brand new LED bulb. It's called the Endura LED. It's very, very sharp. It's won some awards, and I've heard really good things about it. You are going to pay a little bit more, but it sounds like it has a pretty good lifespan as well. Any questions on lights? CFLs, LEDs? Nope. All right, I'll keep on moving. So that's a good product, but remember, we're also talking about good habits. And one thing I really love about energy efficiency is it's something that everyone can do. Doesn't matter your age, your income, your ability, your living situation. Everyone can do something to save energy, and it can actually be kind of fun. Yes, it can be fun. And a great example of that is my friend Aiden here. So I met Aiden about 5 years ago when he was 11. And at the time, Aiden was having some problems with his older brother. His older brother was constantly leaving the lights on. Oh, he'd turn on lights, fans, electronics, and then he would just leave the room. And this was driving Aiden crazy. So he and his mom sat down and they brainstormed, and they came up with Tolby. Tolby stands for turn off lights behind you. So Aiden put up Tolby signs all over his house, and now no one leaves the lights on in Aiden's house because someone is always yelling Tolby at him, and he got so excited about it that he emailed me. Folks, an 11-year-old boy emailed me about saving energy. I should have framed it. I mean, he was just so excited because he did something and he saw that his family changed their habits. It was so empowering for him. Even little things like turning off lights when you leave the room, they make a difference. And they're really good habits to start teaching kids. Now, I have a couple treats for you up here because we like Tolby so much that we worked with Aiden's family to create Tolby the mascot. He's an energy-efficient firefly with a CFL for behind. And we're using him to teach kids good energy habits in schools and at home. So I have a couple of goodies up here. I have some Tolby light switch decals, if you want to help remind someone to Tolby behind them. And these are our most popular. I have some temporary Tolby tattoos. Please take a handful on your way out. But anything you can do to make efficiency fun or a bit of a game, it's a great way to help kids learn. Speaking of good habits, this is a big one. Anyone have a room like this in their house? You turn off the lights and suddenly there are like 80 red eyes staring at you? You're not alone. The average Minnesota family has between 30 and 40 electronics that are left plugged in at all times. And if that electronic has a clock, uses a remote, or has that little light that tells you it's ready to come on at any second, it's always using electricity when it's plugged in, regardless of if it's on or not. And that's called phantom load, or vampire energy. It's very ominous, and for a good reason. It's starting to get really expensive for us. You know, if you look at these electronics by themselves, you know, a cell phone charger or a microwave or your TV, the draw might be small. It's when you add it all together that the numbers start to get kind of nuts. And a great example of this is video game consoles. So at least half the families in our nation have at least one video game console. So stuff like Wii, PlayStation, Xbox. Those left plugged in when idle, so when they're left plugged in and no one's using them, cost our country over $1 billion a year in wasted electricity. So it's $1 billion that American families pay for electricity that we never actually get to use. And this number keeps going up and up as we keep getting more electronics. Now, I'm not going to tell you to not get electronics, because I live in a 3 video game console household, but a really great way to stop that phantom load is to use power strips. If you unplug something directly from an outlet or plug it into a power strip and turn that power strip off, good night, Irene. You've stopped the phantom load. Now, the electronics that have the biggest phantom load, the biggest vampires in your house, TVs, computers, and video game consoles. But remember, it's anything that has a clock, anything that uses a remote, anything that has that little light. I have a couple tips for fighting phantom load. One is, if unplugging something or plugging it into a power strip and turning that power strip off means that you will have to reprogram it every single time, would you do me a personal favor? Please don't do that. There's some things that are meant to be left plugged in, and that's okay. I think cable boxes are a prime example of that. If you had to power your cable box every time, it gets a little tedious. Not to mention, I killed 3 modems from Comcast before I figured out they needed to be left plugged in at all times. What I recommend is focusing on the things you can unplug, like the TV, like your cell phone chargers. My second tip for fighting phantom load, put your power strips where you can reach them. If you have to dislocate your shoulder every time you shimmy behind the TV to turn it off, you're probably not going to do it. But if you have those power strips out and visible, it's a really great way to stop that electricity waste, stop paying for electricity that you never use. Any questions? All right. This is kind of related, but does anyone here have a desktop computer? A desktop computer? A couple folks? It's nothing to be ashamed of. Although this, side note, I was giving a presentation for a freshman class at St. Thomas, and I asked that same question, and no one had a desktop computer. It was a very weird moment for me, but if you have a desktop computer, so the Energy Center of Wisconsin came to Minnesota a couple years ago, and they did this study where they installed occupancy sensors on desktop computers, because they wanted to see, when our computers are on, is there anyone actually in the room with it? And what they found was 75% of the time that computers are on in Minnesota, they are completely and totally alone. I'm guilty of that as well. You get home, you turn on your computer, you get distracted, you walk away, and suddenly you realize that it's been on the whole time. Now, the way to prevent that energy loss, very, very simple, is to set the proper computer power management settings. And yes, I do have a handout that tells you how to do that for all operating systems. But what you want to do is set your computer to sleep after 15 minutes of inactivity. And they found that doing that, just that, can save about $30 per computer per household, just setting it to sleep properly. So this is a good one. Set that setting, tell your friends. Any questions? All right. I'm going to go ahead to programmable thermostats, which means we're on the home stretch, heating and cooling. We're almost there. So 55% of your home's energy use. Now, programmable thermostats, who here has a programmable thermostat? Who here's programmed their programmable thermostat? Yeah, it's kind of the second step here, right? The thing is, about half of the people who have a programmable thermostat don't use it. And it's a real shame. It's a real wasted opportunity because we really don't need to heat or cool our homes as much if there's no one there during the day and if you're asleep at night. However, if you've ever tried to interact with your programmable thermostat, you may notice that they do not seem to be designed for human beings. They can be needlessly complicated. So I'm going to make it easy. The best energy efficient setting for your thermostat is 8 for 8. You set it back by 8 degrees for 8 hours, save 8% on your heating and cooling bills. It's about $100 a year for the average Minnesota family, 8 for 8. Having said that, I'm an energy auditor, not a marriage counselor. Everyone has different ideas about where to set the thermostat, and your comfort is most important. But if you have a furnace, if you have a forced air system, so you get your heat and cooling from grates rather than a boiler where you get your heat from radiators, a programmable thermostat is a really, really smart way to help reduce the energy use of your system. Programmable thermostats can play well with boilers, but it really depends on the system. That's a case in which I might even recommend getting an energy audit so they can take a look at that. But 8 for 8, really smart way to reduce energy use. Anyone here have a chimney? A couple folks? Okay, great. Summer, winter, whenever, if you have a chimney, you really need to make sure that damper is closed. An open damper in the winter becomes a super highway for hot air to go screaming out of your house. You can lose 20% of your heating bill up a chimney if that damper is not closed. So close the damper. If you don't have one, you can get a product that's called a chimney balloon, which is exactly what it sounds like. You inflate it in your chimney. It helps air seal it. It's got a nice tag that hangs down so you know it's there. That's a really, really smart way to just prevent that air leakage. Now, heating tends to be the brunt of our cost, but on summers like this, there are also some good tips you can do to reduce cooling. Now, if you have central air, I really, really recommend contacting Excel to sign up for the Savers Switch program. Anyone here on Savers Switch? Okay, awesome, good. Now, Savers Switch, what they'll do is they'll send an electrician out to your house. You don't have to be home. They're going to install a switch, doesn't actually look like a light switch, but we'll roll with it, on the compressor, which is the outside part of your central air. What that allows them to do is in times of high demand, they can cycle your compressor on and off in 15-minute intervals. The thing is, it's really expensive for our utilities when everyone uses electricity at the same time because they have to be able to provide a theoretical amount of energy, it's called the demand, if everyone used it at the same time. The higher the demand, the more it costs. With Savers Switch, it allows them to reduce their demand, so in return, they give you automatically 15% off your electricity bills from June through September. What happens if they actually activate Savers Switch? Because they're just working with your compressor, the fan in your home keeps going. The biggest temperature change that they've measured is 1 degree. So you stay comfortable, that air keeps moving, it's just stopping your compressor. Now, last summer, you probably remember we had some weeks like this, were really hot, really steamy, and I thought, okay, they had to have activated this. So I called Excel. I wanted to know, are you turning on Saver Switch for residents? And what they told me was, actually, we were just turning it on for businesses. And we were getting such good savings from businesses, we didn't even have to touch the residential Saver Switch. Even if they never turn it on, you still get 15% off your electricity bill. So it's a very, very smart strategy. I also recommend, if you're running a window air conditioner or central, you'd be surprised how many times people forget to close a window or a door. It can be a small thing, but it can make a big difference. And I also, if you're looking at window AC units, it's really, really important that you get them properly sized. I think there's this feeling people have that the bigger the better, I'll just get the biggest unit I can put in here. But if the unit you get is too big for the space that you're cooling, it won't be as efficient at removing the humidity, which, if you ask me, is the most important part. So what you end up having is a very cold, very damp room. A properly sized window unit will help remove that humidity and cool at the same time without using as much energy. Any questions? Heating? Cooling? No, but you're all awake, which is wonderful, so I'll keep going. So, you know, those are good habits, those are good products, but sometimes you can, you know, turn off the lights, have your high efficiency shower head like a champ, but if you're uncomfortable in your home, sometimes it's a bigger project that can help reduce your energy bills and improve your comfort. It's really, really important for a lot of homeowners to know how our homes breathe. Because our homes do breathe, we need a certain amount of air coming in and out of our homes to keep them healthy. It's when there's too much air or not enough air that we start running into some really common problems. Now, if you add up all the little cracks and holes in the average Minnesota home, it equals a hole about the size of a basketball that's open all year round. So even little air sealing that you can do can really make a big difference. There are lots of places that air likes to sneak into our houses, at your outlets and your switch plates. If you don't have any insulation back there, that's a very nifty way for air to get in. Your dryer vents, your crawl spaces, vents, windows, through your walls. But there's one place that hot air likes to escape our home. And it's hot air escaping there that can cause a really big problem in the winter for Minnesota homeowners. Any guesses? Ice dams, exactly. Ice dams are, for the majority, caused by hot air being able to escape our nice warm homes into a cold attic. When it does that, it melts the snow on the roof, which melts, forms that dam in your gutters, and when you have an ice dam, you're in trouble. Because as soon as that melting water can't get past it, it's going to be forced back up under your shingles, into your walls, into your attics. It can be very expensive, it can be very damaging. A couple notes about ice dams. One, never, 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 ever get on your roof to shovel an ice dam. That is an exceedingly bad idea. I don't also recommend the use of heating coils. Those can damage your roof in the long run. Once you get ice dams, the safest way to get them off your house without damaging you or your house is to get them steamed off by a contractor. Better yet, prevent them by having adequate attic insulation, and more importantly than that, seal your attic bypasses. So anything that comes up through your house into your attic, things like chimneys, plumbing stacks, drop soffits, electrical boxes, that can create a pathway for air to come up into your attic. So for relatively inexpensively, under $500, you can probably get a contractor to do that air sealing. You can do it yourself. If you're looking for air leaks in your attic, what I typically tell people to look for are a couple things. One is places where the insulation is sort of dirty or dirtier than the other insulation around it. That's a sign that air is coming up and filtering through it, and it's leaving behind particulate matter. Or look for spiders. Spiders tend to hang out near air leaks in attics because that's where their food comes through. So you can sometimes find those air leaks that way. But by doing that, you can really help prevent ice dams and keep that nice warm air in your home where you need it. So if we've been, part of what CE does is going to people's homes, providing home energy audits. We've been in over 10,000 homes across the state of Minnesota. And what we found are these 3 top improvements. These are the 3 home energy improvements that give you the biggest bang for your buck, that pay back in less than 10 years, and that help you stay comfortable. That's attic insulation and air sealing, wall insulation, and new heating equipment. These tend to be the most cost-effective, smartest home improvements that you can make around energy. Now, how to find out if you need one of these improvements? Sometimes, it's easy to tell if you're uncomfortable or if your house is drafty or if your furnace is old, but it's nice to get some more technical information for that. I do recommend energy audits with a couple codas. So there are typically different levels of energy audits that you can get at your home. Usually for around $50, $60, you can get a basic energy audit from Excel or Centerpoint Energy, which will include what's called a blower door test. And this is really important because the blower door test actually measures in cubic feet per minute how much air is coming through your house. So a technician can look at that number and really understand, is your house really drafty? Is it too tight, which happens? And then they can kind of go from there and give you some really good recommendations. If you have had ice dams, or if you've blown insulation in your walls in the past and you think things have settled in places that are kind of hard to see, what I recommend is getting a more advanced energy audit with an infrared camera. And you can typically get those for around $100, $125. And here's an example of an infrared picture. What an infrared camera does is actually takes a picture of heat escaping your home. So these bright white right there, that's heat coming through a door. So instead of peeling off an entire section of your wall, an infrared camera can actually see the heat that's moving there. You do need a 20-degree temperature difference between the inside and the outside of your house for an infrared camera to work. And because it's a little more expensive, I typically only recommend that if you're having some sort of weird, if you're having ice dams or weird cold spots, you can get a lot of really good information with a blower door. I'll say this about energy audits. The great thing about them is they give you a lot of information, and the bad thing about them is that they give you a lot of information. And I have talked to some people who sometimes feel overwhelmed after an energy audit, and that's why I talk about these top 3 energy improvements. They could give you a laundry list of a million things. Focus on 1 or 2 things to get done this year. That's really all you need to do. A couple things off that list. It'll make a difference. You'll end up saving money on your energy bills, which you can put towards the next improvement. But don't stress about getting all of that done. It's really about what's going to be the biggest bang for your buck. Now, when it comes to paying for these things, Tom mentioned the HRA has a great rehab loan program. Now, the Center for Energy and Environment, the nonprofit I work for, also has a couple financing programs that can help. We do have a home energy loan program that has a 2.99% interest rate loan for certain energy improvements. So that includes the insulation, air sealing, heating equipment, new water heater. So if you're looking into something like that, I would recommend visiting our website or giving us a call. It's ceeloans.org, and I have some business cards I can give you. We also are one of the administrators of the Minnesota Housing and Finance Authority's Fix Up Fund, which is a 5.99 program which includes energy but also general home improvements. With that, I've completely exhausted my knowledge of financing. So if you have any questions, like I said, I can give you a card. Yes, Tom.
Working with Bloomington homeowners, one of the first things they want to do is replace the windows. You didn't talk about windows. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So sharp, thank you. Yes, I didn't talk about windows. And that's because windows really tend not to be anywhere near the most cost-effective improvement you can make to your home. Now, the thing about air leaks in your home, the vast majority of air leaks come through walls. We're talking 25%. The reason I think why a lot of people go to windows, and it's easy to understand, is that glass is very conductive. It conducts heat really, really well, which means if you're standing near a glass window in the winter and you start to feel cold, that's because it's literally sucking the heat out of your body. But getting brand new windows can be very expensive, and in some cases, it may not do that much to improve your comfort. If you have single-paned windows that were installed in 1905, that's kind of another issue. But doing things like rehabbing your windows, adding storms, doing air sealing can be a much more cost-effective way to improve the performance of your windows without having to go for replacement. If your windows were installed incorrectly, so if you're having issues more around the rough edge of it, if you're looking at replacing windows, I do recommend pairing that with insulation, especially in your walls or your attic. You can typically insulate your entire house for the cost of 4 or 5 windows. So if you do the insulation first, you're going to have a little bit more money in your pocket to look at doing windows in the future. Does that make sense? It is kind of one of those things where, yes, when you're near a window, you're going to be cold, but you're going to be cold near a really new window as well. What we do in the winter in my house is we do that plastic window wrap. Any layer you add between yourself and a window is just going to help with that. Or using blinds or curtains. Helps in the summer as well. You should really keep your windows closed and your blinds closed during the summer to prevent solar gain. That sun beating through your windows can actually damage your furniture and your rugs in the long term. It can kind of dull them, and it's just more heat that's flowing into your home. Yes?
Any comments on those? I think they're called on-demand water heaters.
Okay, yes, on-demand or tankless water heaters. So this is a kind of water heater that's been used in Europe for a while, but it's starting to gain more traction. The concept is instead of having that giant tank of water, you just heat water when you need it, thus tankless or on-demand. Now right now, tankless water heaters are about 5% of the water heaters installed in the US, which means a couple things. There aren't as many contractors that install them, and there aren't as many models. But our research department recently did a study on tankless water heaters in Minnesota. We installed them in a couple different water heaters in 10 houses to see how they worked. What we found was on average, tankless water heaters use between about 35% less energy than a standard water heater. However, the payback can be between 20 to 60 years, depending. And that's for a couple reasons. One is, like I said, there just aren't as many folks who do them. But the other reason is that they actually need quite a bit of gas when you turn them on. You gotta heat that water really, really fast. In some older homes, your existing gas line may not be sufficient. So I have a coworker who installed one, bless his heart. He ended up putting in a whole new gas line and a gas meter. That tends to drive up the cost. But if you're interested in them, I can give you some resources about them. I think they can be good. You're like, okay, you've convinced me. I think they can be really good in some applications, especially if you don't have space for a tank water heater, or like in a cabin or a place where you're not using hot water as much. But the economics are still a little squidgy on them.
I was in a house once that had, it seemed to me that it took a long time for hot water heaters to
Yeah.
There's no standing warm water in the pipes.
Yeah, and we have heard that typically with a tankless water heater, you're not going to get hot water out of the faucet right away. You know, it takes a little bit longer. And sometimes there can be what are called cold water sandwiches. So like you're saying, there's not hot water in the pipe. So if you turn off that tankless, you can get these kind of sections of cold water in between the hot water, which if you're in the shower, for example, can be a little bit startling. But if you're in a household that uses a lot of hot water, if you're sort of regularly running out of hot water and you're having a hard time with that, that's where a tankless can come to advantage, because it's basically an infinite supply of hot water. It kind of depends on what your house's needs are. Now, you guys memorized everything that I said tonight, right? Word for word? Okay, good. Just in case you didn't, there's this website. It's called the Minnesota Energy Challenge. It's fun, it's fabulous, it's free, it's mine. And it has all the information about all the good products, good habits that I talked about tonight. And that's at mnenergychallenge.org. Now, the Energy Challenge is a knowledge repository, but it's also an outreach program. So we have teams on the Energy Challenge for businesses, for schools, for churches, and what we're trying to show is what happens when Minnesotans come together to save energy. Now, right now on the challenge, we have over 28,000 members across the state. It's from Duluth to Rochester. And in total, they're pledging to save over $14 million a year in energy. That's just 28,000 folks. So it really, when you make these changes, even if they're small, these good habits, they really do add up and they can make a big difference. So I'm going to stick around. I've got some handouts up here. Don't forget, Toby temporary tattoos, very important. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.